Welcome. This is a bit of a different video to normal. First time I've done this. So I posted a bunch of AMA requests. If you want to ask a question, I was going to make a video and then respond to those questions. So that's what this is. There's like 20 questions or so, and I'll put them all on the screen and talk about them as I answer them. If this is good, if people like this, I'll do this again. If it's no good, then I just won't do it again. But there's some good questions in here, some things that people ask all the time. So it's probably going to be pretty useful for some people. So first up, Dylan Hodges Photos asks, what do you love most and hate most about each brand of camera body that you've used? So, first camera that I bought was an Olympus E510. We're talking like 15 years ago. Bought the camera on finance when I probably couldn't have afforded it. Monthly, I think it took like 3 years to pay off. And what didn't I like about that camera? It didn't shoot video. Didn't really know at the time that I didn't like it, but thinking back now, didn't shoot video. You had to have a separate camera for shooting video. I literally had a video camera, a mini DV camera, put tapes in it, and I have the Olympus for photos, which was my very first DSLR. Canon 60D was my second camera before I jumped over to Sony, and I actually really liked that camera. It was pretty good. Flip out screen. First camera that did proper video with lenses where you can control the focus and get that shallow depth of field look, the bokeh that everyone wants. But that was probably the biggest thing I didn't like about the camera. It wasn't continuous autofocus. It was manual, or you click and hold the button, it would slowly focus, like I'm talking really slow, and then it would focus. And if you move the subject or subject changes location from the camera, you'd have to refocus, which is not great by today's standards. At the time it wasn't that bad, but not great today. Also, the low light abilities of that camera, it was a crop camera, it really wasn't good. My A6300 was my next camera. What don't I like about that? Dims when you're shooting 4K. Low light abilities of the camera aren't the greatest, and it doesn't have a flip out screen. I actually then got an A6000 as my second backup. Doesn't have 120, it's literally just 60 frames a second, so that's what I don't like about that camera. And then now I have the Sony A7 III. What don't I like about that? Doesn't have a flip screen. That's pretty much it. Next up we have Henry Grover. I'm sorry if I butcher these names, but this one looks pretty straightforward, but I'm sure there's going to be other ones that aren't. Henry Grover asks, I make wedding films and some commercials. Should I get the Sony 1635 f4 or the 7200 f4? That's a tough one. 1635 is going to be way more versatile. 70-200 is going to be more cinematic for sure. Just depends if you're going to be far enough away from your subject to be able to use a 70-200. Also depends if you're using a crop camera or a full frame. So if you're using something like a full frame, I'd say 70-200 might be okay if you were looking for more cinematic. If you're going to be using on a gimbal, that kind of thing, 100% 1635 f4, which is what I'm shooting with right now actually. Very versatile, my favorite lens, stays on my camera 95% of the time. Tamak_K asks, best all-round lens for Sony. Two different ones. One I just talked about, the Sony 1635 f4. Alternatively, Tamron 2875, which I actually sold. I'll talk about that in another video, but that's a very popular lens, very versatile lens, and it's actually not that bad. I will be rebuying that lens. I'll address that in another whole video on its own, but Tamron 2875 is probably a good option for you too. Justin Filming, Just Into Filming. Oh, I see what you did there, that's smart. Just Into Filming asks, what tripod are you using? Well, it's actually a Benro tripod. I just got this at a camera show in Toronto. One sec. This is the Benro iPhoto FIF28C with a ball head that came on it. It's the Benro IB2 ball head. This is a carbon fiber tripod, the most expensive one I've ever bought, but I love it. Whoops. But I love it. It's really good. It's really sturdy. Never moves at all. I bought this because of my early obsession into astrophotography, and I needed a tripod that would move around a lot. Nice thing about this too is you can take one of the legs out, use it as a monopod if you want to. The ball head does come off, and it's screw legs, so you don't have those stupid little switches. I like this tripod a lot. RWYS Rory Stepakek. Sorry. Rory Stepakek 5 asks, how much extra B-roll do you end up shooting that goes unused in your video? A lot. Sometimes, well, as an example for a wedding film, you would shoot probably throughout a day for a highlight film. I'd on average probably shoot 3 hours of video, and I compress that down into a 5 to 8 minute highlight film. So that gives you an idea. For YouTube videos, I plan my videos a lot and I list all the shots I need. I have a script for the most part, or at least bullet points that I talk about, so I don't really get that much left over for YouTube videos. I can shoot most videos that I shoot take me 20 minutes to half an hour to shoot in terms of the talking to the camera like this, and then I cut that down into however long it ends up being. Dana Did It asks, hey, I'm doing a Q&A video though, we can't both do one, can we? Well, Dana, we gotta share sometimes. We gotta share the YouTube audience. Check out Dana's channel if you don't already, up here or down here. He does really in-depth tutorials, reviews on products. Really good channel, and he got Creator on the Rise in Canada recently, so congrats, Dana. Jacob Takos asks, when do you think it is necessary to buy a new camera? That's a great question. I think now with so many cameras coming out all the time, you always kind of want the new one and you don't necessarily need it. So 3 points here. Number one, when you should buy a new camera, if it breaks, stops working, you need a new one. Number two, you need a specific feature that you don't currently have. So let's say, for example, you had a Canon 60D and it didn't do continuous autofocus. You needed continuous autofocus. That's a feature your camera doesn't have that you now need. It's a reason to buy one. The other thing would be if you need a backup. So if you're doing any form of pro work, any work where you're getting paid, you need some form of a backup. If you're shooting a gig, doing a wedding, and your main camera breaks, you have to have a backup. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. You need a backup. You should have a second backup, maybe even a third too. If a new camera comes out with a couple of features that you don't necessarily need, that's not a reason to buy a camera. If it breaks, if you need a backup, or if you need a specific feature that you don't currently have, those are what I'd say are the 3 reasons. Torres Row 203 asks, where is the best places to sell used photography equipment? Great question, and I actually have a story to go with this. Somewhere where you can meet people in person. In Canada, I use Kijiji a lot. I think in the States they have Gumtree. Classified ads, somewhere where you can list it online, that's where I'd say, because you want to meet that person, you want to have a cash exchange, let them test it out so it's good for them as well as you. Not online. Do not sell your camera equipment, like expensive cameras or lenses, online, because there's so much risk involved. You could buy something that doesn't work. For example, my friend just sold a camera on eBay. eBay you should not use as well, in my opinion. He sold the camera in its absolute perfect condition. He shipped it to the person, and as soon as they received it, they complained and they said they want to return because there was a mark on the sensor. And he had to pay the shipping back, he had to pay the shipping there, and he ended up getting screwed because it wasn't a mark on the sensor, it was a little piece of dust. That person who bought the camera from him really didn't know much about what they were buying. There was dust on the sensor and they could have just got rid of it with, actually I have one right here, they could have got rid of it with a blower. Problem solved. Instead, he ended up getting burned. He got his camera back, but he had to pay a lot of money out of pocket for something that he shouldn't have had to do. Meet in person, you can go over those things. You can say to a person if there's dust on the sensor, hey, it's just dust, blow it off, try it out. If you're not happy, still don't buy it. Meet in person. MKE11Y, I'm guessing that's Mikey11Y. Mike M. Kelly. Ah, I see what you're doing. Favorite picture profile. I actually don't use picture profiles. I use a creative style on everything. For my professional work, for YouTube videos, I don't use a picture profile. I don't see the need. I like how the image looks when I use the creative style that I use, and I don't want to have to waste time with grading. I shot a whole video about this from last year, I think. The creative style that I use is autumn leaves. It bumps the contrast a bit, the saturation is dropped a little bit, and I like how it looks. If you like this, then you like autumn leaves creative style. Mags MC87, my sister-in-law, asks favorite season. Summer with snow and mountains. I really like shooting in winter because of the snow, how everything looks, but I like the heat of the summer too, so can't really get what I want. The Artist XS asks, recommended filters for your camera, ND, polarized, etc. So ND filter, yes, always. If you want to maintain your shutter speed for cinematic loading footage, you need an ND filter. I'd recommend an 8 or a 16. Polar Pro make really good ones. They're a little more expensive, but they're really, really high quality. Actually, that's a Polar Pro one on there. They have a really nice finish to them. Also, a variable lens filter, if you're just starting, will be a really good one for you to play around with as well. Gobe, G-O-B-E, they make really good ones. I've got one, I really like it. In terms of polarized filters, a polarized filter will reduce reflections through windows, so you can see through a window opposed to just seeing the outside and a reflection. You'll also be able to see a little bit clearer through water if you're shooting Instead of just having the shine on the water, you might actually be able to get through, shoot some fish, whatever. And yeah, so that's what a polarized filter is for. And you should always be using a UV filter, which is basically a clear bit of glass. Doesn't matter if you buy an expensive one, a cheap one, just one to protect your camera. You should always have a UV filter. SSJ Brad asks, favorite type of photography? Landscape, to be honest with you. I like wide landscape and all the things that come with it. Architecture style stuff too. Anything that's wide. I'm starting to get into astro as well. Alex Exposure. How long did it take you to get comfortable talking to the camera? I want to vlog, but I feel awkward. That will never go if you're vlogging, at least. People are always going to ask you what you do and stare at you. You just have to kind of deal with it and get through it. Talking to a camera like this, I'd say a good few months, lots of videos. Over time, it will just become normal. Think like you're engaging with people. So when you're responding to comments, kind of think of it like that. So I'm talking to people opposed to talking to no one in an empty room with a camera that I'm then going to upload. Imagine you're talking to people, you're having a conversation. That's the easiest way to do it. Sebastian Prada 07 asks, how to use the compensation wheel? So I'm assuming you're talking about the compensation wheel on something like a Sony a7 III. So if you're shooting in, let's say, shutter priority or aperture priority, it will only allow you to change the aperture or the shutter speed. But let's say you change it and you still need to bump a little bit more. So you want to have your shutter speed set at, let's say, 1/50th of a second, but it's too dark. The compensation wheel will allow you to crank that up a little bit, still use 1/50th of a second, and get a higher exposure by cranking that exposure wheel. So it's kind of like using certain aspects of the automatic features of the camera and then having a little bit more manual control without worrying about being in full manual mode. Now, if you're using something like shutter speed priority and you're in 1/50th of a second and you're using an exposure crank, you're either going to suffer through your aperture loss or your ISO. So bear that in mind. The Artist XS again asks, which new camera announcement were you most and least excited for? Least excited for? I wouldn't say I'm ever least excited for a camera announcement because you really never know what's going to happen. There could be some new camera that comes out that's amazing that you really want to get your hands on. In terms of ones I'm looking forward to or most excited for would be definitely the a7S III. I want to make that my A camera and the a7 III my B, and then the a6300 will be a C, or I sell it. So the a7S III, definitely. I was interested in the Canon as well, to be honest. The Canon EOS RP, even though it's a massive failure because it doesn't do 25 frames, or it doesn't do 24 frames a second. I was interested in it. Wouldn't mind picking that up. The new Panasonics as well look very interesting, but their price is insane. So yeah, I'd say the a7S III is the biggest one. Phil V Films asks, real and not placebo difference between the a7 III and the a6500 image? That's a great question, actually. A lot of people sometimes just get caught up in that I need to buy the newest camera, as I talked about earlier, and actual differences. So biggest difference you're going to find with the a7 III versus the a6500. One is going to be low light. Low light abilities of the camera are going to be way, way, way better. You're using a full frame sensor, lets a lot more light into the sensor compared to the little cropped sensor. So low light abilities is going to be a huge thing. So that means if you're shooting photos, you can go a much higher shutter speed and still get the same exposure compared to if you're using an a6500. Field of view as well is going to be a huge thing. I really like the full frame look. Lenses are actually as they appear to be. So for example, a 24 is actually going to be a 24, whereas if you were shooting a 24 on a a6300 and a6500, it's going to be with the crop on it as well. So 24 times 1.5 or whatever that is. So if you really like wide, there's not really that many options out there that are automatic for shooting on a crop camera. Other than like the Sigma 16mm, which equates to be a 24, you don't really have that many wide automatic options for an a6500. So for me, I really like wide. That's why I like a7 III and full frame cameras. I'm getting my actual focal range, 16, 16, 24 is a 24, etc. Hopefully that answers your question. There is a whole bunch of stuff related to aperture and how a 1.4 on a full frame or a 1.4 on an APS-C is slightly different. I'm not going to go into that, but there's a lot of videos on that, so that's something else you can look at too. Adriana's Frames asks, I want a new full frame camera and I don't know if DSLR or mirrorless help, in capital letters. Mirrorless, I'm biased because I have mirrorless, but mirrorless is the way forward. There's way more features with mirrorless. Things that you can do with mirrorless that you just can't do with DSLR. They're smaller, they're lighter, way more pocketable, but they offer so many more features. Just get a mirrorless. Matt B. Williams 5 asks, best run and gun all round. I have a Zeus, I'm assuming you mean a Zeiss, 1624 for landscape and 55 for portrait. Best all-round run and gun. So what I use is the 1635, what I'm shooting on right now. The Tamron 2875 f2.8 will be a good option for you as well. Those are probably your best run and guns. Twing_pate, probably butchered that too, sorry. What's your best picture profile to film weddings or projects for clients? Thank you. Same answer to the question I was asked earlier. I don't use picture profiles, I use creative styles. The Autumn Leaves creative style, I'll put the link down below because you guys are clearly interested in how the color that I use in the image, how it looks. Just so you know as well, I don't edit this image at all. It's literally exposed properly and I upload it. I edit it, but like cut up the video, but I edit it as is. There's no additional grade done on this video. I don't even edit exposure. It's shot in camera and that's it. Oh, that was the last question. So 20 questions on the dot. Hopefully you got some interest from this. If you guys have any more questions, pop comments down below and I'll answer those in text, not in video. I'll probably do another one of these soon. I quite enjoyed doing this. On the fly, on the cuff, and it makes me think, so I like them. All right, thanks for those questions, everybody. I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.